What's going on, everybody? Kalupis Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, we're going to take another look at the Samsung Galaxy A33 5G and go over whether or not it's still a good phone to buy in 2023. Now, as always, if you do end up wanting to learn more about this phone, definitely check out the description where I am linking to several other videos about it, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But with that being said, let's get into it. So with the Samsung Galaxy A33 5G, we're getting a decently large 6.4-inch 90Hz Super AMOLED display. This phone has a 1080p resolution, a PPI of 411, and a 20:9 aspect ratio. So definitely a great display here, and even at this point in 2023, about a year after this phone was originally launched, compared to other phones in this price range, the display we're getting here is still definitely one of the better ones. At 6.4 inches, while not being the largest display out there, again, it still is decently large, so I feel like for most people, it's not like it's going to be too small or anything. With the Super AMOLED, we're definitely getting some real good display technology here. So compared to something like an IPS LCD, for example, which I want to say most phones in this general $300-ish price range are going to have some kind of LCD type display. In comparison, a Super AMOLED typically has nicer looking colors, a brighter image in general, and the viewing angles are also quite a bit better. So if you're outside in the sun, for example, or really in any kind of bright area, a Super AMOLED is going to be a lot easier to see. We're also getting a nice sharp image with a 1080p resolution and with a 90Hz refresh rate compared to your standard 60Hz display. The movement on the screen is going to be a bit faster and smoother, making the phone feel more premium to use. Now, one thing about that I do want to point out here is that while a 90Hz display is definitely good, maybe not a lot, but a lot more displays nowadays are starting to get like 120Hz instead. So at this point, while 90Hz is still, again, pretty good, it's not really that amazing or anything, but at the same time, it definitely doesn't hurt either. Now for storage, with the A33 5G, we're getting 128GB of internal storage with microSD card expansion, so definitely plenty of storage here. But also keep in mind, there is another variant in this phone that has 256, so if you want even more storage, then with this phone, you can get it. That being said though, I feel like for the average user, 128GB is really plenty of storage, so unless you're maybe recording a lot of 4K videos, which you can offload to a microSD card anyway, or maybe you're downloading a ton of apps and games and stuff like that, you probably won't need more than 128. So in general, if storage is a priority for you, the A33 5G will be a good choice. For security features, with this phone, we are getting Face Unlock, as well as a nice in-display fingerprint scanner. So definitely more of a premium look here, but let's give it a try. There we go, one more time. And there we go. So as you can see, real fast and responsive, no issues at all. And again, I am glad we are getting Face Unlock too. So if you want to use that instead, you always can. For the camera setup here, with the Samsung Galaxy A33 5G, up front, we're getting a pretty decent 13MP selfie camera. Then on the back, we got a quad camera setup with a 48MP main camera, an 8MP ultra-wide camera, a 2MP depth sensing camera, and a 5MP macro camera. And then for video, this phone can record 4K videos in both the rear and front cameras, so definitely nice to see here. When it comes to 4K video recording, while it's not exactly unheard of in this price range, even at this point in 2023, it's really not common. In fact, I want to say even a couple years ago in like 2021, in this price range, there were actually more phones back then that could record 4K videos for whatever reason. We had phones like the Motorola Moto G Stylus 2021. That phone could actually record 4K videos in the rear camera, but now for some reason at this point in 2023, in this price range, pretty much the only phones I've seen that can record 4K videos are Samsung Galaxy A series of some sort. And while sure you could get something like a used flagship phone, maybe some sort of Google Pixel or an older iPhone, when it comes to new phones or fairly new phones, if you want to record 4K videos in this price range, the A33 5G is really one of the only options. And of course, when it comes to general camera features, the A33 5G has pretty much everything you typically find in a mid-range phone, including an ultra-wide camera and a macro camera, so definitely great to see there. So in general, if you're taking lots of pictures and recording lots of videos, and you want to make sure you have a good camera, then overall I would say this phone will be a great choice. To give you an idea of what it can do, here are some pictures taken with the Samsung Galaxy A33 5G. Overall, for what it is, I do think the photo quality is pretty good, and for most people, you're probably not going to need a camera better than this. If you're taking pictures for stuff like Instagram or Twitter, or maybe you're sending photos to friends and family, or maybe you're on vacation taking photos for your own memories, for stuff like that, you really don't need a super high-end $1,000 flagship phone. You can get something like this for a fraction of the price, and it will get the job done just fine. So while on one hand, if you're really taking lots of pictures and that's maybe a hobby of yours, and you want to get the best quality you can in a smartphone, then yeah, in that case, of course, you could probably justify spending a bit more and getting something higher end, which obviously will be better. But again, for the average user, the photo quality we get with this phone will be perfectly fine. Now when it comes to RAM and processor, with the Samsung Galaxy A33 5G, we're getting 6GB of RAM with the Samsung Exynos 1280 processor. For the overall performance, considering this is more of a mid-range device, I would say it is pretty good. Definitely not anywhere near something like a Samsung Galaxy S21 FE or the Google Pixel 6a or any of those slightly higher end devices. But at the same time, for typical daily use, if you're doing stuff like web browsing, social media, streaming content like videos and music, and maybe some light mobile gaming, for that kind of stuff, this phone will get the job done just fine. And personally, I haven't had any performance issues, so if you are looking for more of an affordable device for more basic use, I would say this phone will be a pretty good choice. Now I did run a benchmark test on this phone using Geekbench 6, and here are the results I got. So what I recommend doing is running this test on your current phone, and then comparing your results to these, and that's going to give you a better idea of whether or not this phone will be a performance upgrade for you, because depending on what you currently have, it may or may not be. If you're coming from maybe an older, lower end entry level kind of phone, then yeah, this phone is definitely going to be a solid upgrade. But if you're coming from something like an older flagship phone, like maybe a super old but higher end Samsung Galaxy S9 for example, in that case, chances are it's probably going to be a bit of a downgrade. But again, for the average user, for things most people are typically using smartphones for anyway, performance wise, I do think this phone will at least get the job done. Now for the battery, with the Samsung Galaxy A33 5G, we're getting a 5000 mAh battery that supports 25W fast charging, so definitely a great battery here. When it comes to charging speed, first of all, I do want to point out to actually use the fast charging here, you will need a 25W fast charger, which this phone does not come with. In fact, it doesn't even come with a wall adapter at all. So if you do want to take full advantage of the charging here, definitely be prepared to get a fast charger. And when it comes to the overall battery, a 5000 mAh battery is definitely a really large battery, so you can expect to get great battery life and longevity here. So if you're in a situation where maybe you're not always around a charger, but you still have to use your phone all day, a phone like this that has a really large battery will be a great choice. And then down the road, as the battery degrades, which of course all batteries do, with this phone, you're not going to notice it nearly as quickly as you would with a much smaller battery. So if you want to get one phone and keep it for a longer time without having to replace it, the A33 5G will be a great choice. Now for the software, with this phone, we are getting Android 13, and in addition to this, keep in mind, Samsung really has some of the best software support you can get. So even though this phone is over a year old now, compared to phones that are coming out now, I feel like the software support here is even better. With this device, you can expect to get Android 14, 15, and 16. So even compared to something like a Motorola or a OnePlus, despite those manufacturers getting a little better when it comes to software support, at least now, I still feel like if you really want the best software support, if you want to keep a phone for multiple years and still get the latest software, even now, a Samsung like this is definitely a great choice. When it comes to other features, this phone does have NFC, and in case you don't know, NFC is the technology behind contactless mobile payment services. So if you like to use tap and pay, to use that feature, you will need NFC. And luckily, again, this phone does have it, which on one hand is really not surprising considering at this point in 2023, unless we're talking about a Motorola, pretty much every other 5G phone is going to have NFC. It's really more of an expectation, but just keep in mind there are some phones out there that don't have it. But again, the A33 5G is not one of those. Something else to keep in mind, and this is kind of unfortunate, but with the A33 5G, this phone does not have a headphone jack. So if you have a normal pair of 3.5mm headphones you want to use them with this phone, you will need an adapter. But in conclusion, is the Samsung Galaxy A33 5G still worth buying in 2023? In general, I would definitely say yes, in pretty much every way. Despite maybe not being the best at this point, there are phones out there that have slightly better cameras, faster processors, larger displays, and just better features overall. But honestly, I feel like for what it is, being a really affordable 5G phone, you're really not going to go wrong with this device. It does have a really nice display for consuming content, plenty of storage. This phone also has a great camera that again can record 4K videos, in addition to having a bunch of other features. The battery is pretty much perfect. It has great software support, NFC, and decent performance too. So again, in general, if you're looking for an affordable 5G phone, then even at this point in 2023, I do think the Samsung Galaxy A33 5G is still worth considering. Now once again, if you do want to learn more about this phone, definitely check out the description, where I am linking to several other videos about it, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it and found it useful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to follow Kalibus Tech on Twitter and Instagram. And as always, I will see you in the next video.